I am sure you will not have overlooked the obvious fact that a poor worker in India, for instance, who grows rice by hand in the fields, is much less productive than a worker who has capital equipment available, the most modern machines, the most modern tractor. One American farmer, with computers and a tractor, can plow and prepare many hectares in one day, but it would take hundreds of Indians to do that job virtually by hand, or with a Roman plow, in the same amount of time. The American worker, or the Swiss, the European, is much more productive than the Indian because the former has at his disposal well-invested capital machines, tools, tractors, etc. We have shown that each worker tends to be paid the value of his contribution to the production process. And since the American worker is far more productive than the Chinese or Indian worker, because the American has many more machines, he earns 100 times what the Chinese or Indian worker earns. It is not that the American is cleverer, it is not that he works more hours. He simply has available to him much more capital well invested, much more capital equipment in the form of manufacturing plants, tools, computers, software, machinery, tractors, the latest technology. So, if we wish to help poor countries and poor people out of poverty, and we wish to see them increasingly progress and prosper, it is essential that we foster the accumulation of well-invested capital. The only way out of poverty for a country or an individual is to have more capital equipment. Therefore, the fundamental secret is to encourage and protect capitalists. There is only one way to combat poverty, and that is to foster the spirit of saving and to encourage capitalists and entrepreneurs so that they will invest wisely in capital equipment. Hence, the way for a country to escape poverty is to attract savers, to attract capitalists, and to lower taxes. The capitalist and the saver are the ones who must be wooed. This flies in the face of all the demagogy we are used to. What do populists and demagogues in poor countries, like Chavez or Maduro in Venezuela or Morales in Bolivia, usually do? They harass capitalists. They paint a picture of good guys versus bad guys. And they say, it's capitalist exploiters against the poor. What have we got to do? Confiscate the property of the capitalists. Redistribute wealth. Take from some to give to others. Raise taxes. This means condemning the workers to poverty. Economic theory reveals that each worker tends to be paid the value of his contribution to the production process. And the more capital the worker uses in his daily work, the larger his contribution will be. In other words, the more productive the worker will be. But for this to occur, others must first have saved. Therefore, countries must court capitalists, encourage them to save, respect their property, and attract foreign investments. It is the capitalist we must woo and support if we wish to help workers out of poverty. And yet, I repeat, the picture painted for us, the message we hear on the street, is exactly the opposite. We have to go after the capitalist. If he has made any money, he has probably stolen it. This is a social injustice. We must take from the rich and give to the poor. If we take from the rich and give to the poor will consume what they receive, run out of capital, and be condemned to poverty. It is the story of the ant and the grasshopper, but it sells quite well, and everybody says, okay, what say we take the 100 richest people in Spain, seize their wealth, and divide it up among everybody? And everyone thinks, hey, that sounds fantastic. I will get 1,000 euros, and with that I can buy a car, go to the movies, add on to my home. Fantastic! But let us not be fools. We must not fall for that ploy. You are university students. You are studying economic science. Many of you are young, and you are probably idealistic, and you have goals of helping the needy. But you need to know that the best, in fact the only, way to help the needy is to foster capitalism. Is that clear? And the demonstration I have just given shows this to be true. What happens when people save less? Other things being equal, the interest rate rises. There is a smaller supply of present goods, and more must be paid for them in the form of interest in the future. Workers and factors of production are paid the present value, the future value discounted by the interest rate. And if the interest rate goes up, the present value goes down. If saving decreases, wages do too, because the interest rate tends to rise. and thus the discounted value tends to be lower. This is in keeping with what I have been saying. Also, if saving increases, interest rates fall, and the discounted value is higher. Wages rise, and all of the spiritual and moral leaders who proclaim that we must redistribute the wealth to help the poor, that we must take from the rich, are utterly mistaken. They are imagining a static model, as if wealth were a given, and all we had to do was divvy up the pie. Not so, ladies and gentlemen. The social process is a dynamic process of entrepreneurial creativity. There are no givens. Everything depends on whether or not the dynamic contributors to this process are able to create new things, and thus raise the living standard of everyone. In this process, the leading role is played by the entrepreneur, who is the one we should be supporting, and also the capitalist, who saves and makes capital equipment available to workers, to make them more and more productive, and enable them to earn higher and higher wages as a result.